Respect Project talk on this beautiful Sunday this summer. We've got an incredible group of people. The topic is choosing love in spite of pain, in the face of pain, overcoming pain, what have you, but choosing love above all else. I've got Scarlett Lewis, who is the founder of the Choose Love movement. She also is the author of a book called Nurturing Healing Love. She's a speaker and an incredible soul out there just blasting light onto everybody. Diane Gray is a grief and death care expert, and Debbie Lee is a speaker, author, and she's the founder of America's Mighty Warriors. Daryl Scott is with us today. He's the founder and director of Rachel's Challenge. Fritzi Horstman is with us today. She's the founder of the Compassion Prison Project and also a speaker. Ryan Shibarini is the co-host of Windy City Live in Chicago, and he's a great actor and musician with us today. We have Arthur Schwartz, who is the founder of character.org. And so without further ado, I was talking to friends of mine who are out, partying and enjoying the summer, and they said, wow, this is a pretty heavy group of heavy hitters. And I would say that is true, but it also, to me, is an incredibly inspiring hour that I've been looking forward to now for over a month, to have each of you come together to talk about how you personally have overcome tragedy in your life and turned it into purpose. So to me, that is not a dark topic. That is an incredibly light topic. And that is what the world needs now: more community and more support and more love. And so we tell our stories on behalf of each other to offer as help. And so I would love to start with you, Scarlett, to talk about, for those that don't know about the Choose Love movement, why, how, and what you're doing with Choose Love right now.
Thank you so much, Liz. Yes, I agree with you. Sharing stories opens our hearts, which then opens our minds. And of course, we're all here today because we want to be part of the solution to the issues that have taken our loved ones and that are negatively impacting our world today. My 6-year-old son was murdered at Sandy Hook Elementary School alongside 19 of his classmates and 6 educators in one of the worst mass murders in US history. When I came home back to my house that I shared with my 2 boys as a single mom, I found a message that Jesse had written on our kitchen chalkboard. And it was 3 words: nurturing, healing, love. And I knew immediately that if the shooter, who was a former student of Sandy Hook Elementary School, whose mother had taught at the school, had been able to give and receive love, that the tragedy would never have happened. It was so simple, but simple isn't always easy. And so I did some research, not focusing on the problem, but figuring out what caused this? How can something like this happen, and how can we prevent it from happening? And I realized that there are a bunch of essential life skills that we can teach ourselves, one another. They can be learned in school. These are not skills and tools that we're born with. We have to learn them, and they're like how to have a healthy relationship and meaningful connections, how to manage our emotions, how to grow through, learn from, and be strengthened by difficulty. I really feel like that's the key to life, and then translate it into helping, we can help others, how to make responsible decisions. All of these are so important, and we're not born with them. We have to learn them, and they would have prevented Sandy Hook. And so I have spent the past 8 years since the tragedy solely focused on making sure that every child has access to what we know is in their best interest.
But how do we learn those skills? I mean, that's the big part of why I wanted to have each of you here together, because this is a group of spiritual ninjas. I don't think that everybody that experiences, and I mean, everybody does experience suffering and pain and trauma to some degree or another, but I don't think everybody collectively can become strong through it, but each of you has. And how can you share with others how and why you were able to do that, how and why you still are able to do that? Scarlett, you're going through something right now with a friend who's losing a child, and it brings up a lot of emotion, and to be strong in that again. so we choose to stay strong every day of our lives. And how can we help share with others how we've been able to do that? Any of you guys have a thought on that?
I
Diane,
think that
Ray. Okay, Debbie, go ahead.
I think that's definitely something like everything else in life. When you learn a skill, you have to practice that over and over and over. And so I think that's something important, whether it's children that we're working with or as adults, that we practice our responses to different circumstances in life. I'm thinking of children right now. I had a preschool and kindergarten for 15 years. And so I had little ones around me all the time. And, if we take bullying at school, if they're being picked on, then you find out, you practice with them and you rehearse that over and over and over until they're comfortable when that happens, that it's natural response for them. Because so often in the midst of the crisis, in the trial, the tragedy, your emotions take control and you can't think clearly. But if you practice something like that, then that skill is more natural to be able to be used.
Absolutely. Fritzy, one of the things that stands out to me, what Debbie and both Scarlett said is, and it's a quote that I was looking at this morning, there are far too many silent sufferers, not because they don't yearn to reach out, but because they've tried and found no one who cares. And you are somebody who cares. Each and every one of you is somebody who cares. And you have answered your own grief by giving to the world what you so deeply needed, either for your own child or in the tragedy you experienced or through the personal trauma you've experienced. Fritzy, you go into prisons and you help prisoners acknowledge their own personal trauma so that there is ultimate healing. And I'd love to have you explain to everybody why you were inspired to create the Compassion Prison Project.
Absolutely. I walked into prison after having read a book called The Body Keeps the Score by Bessel van der Kolk. I don't know if you know what an ACE is, an adverse childhood experience, but I have 8 of those out of 10. And that's a high level, that's a high dosage of adversity for a little girl. Probably same for the shooter that took those lives. And we're also dealing with people in prison that have taken many lives. And when you look at their crimes, you see a high level of adversity for 98% of them. And when I found out I was traumatized and I stepped inside a prison, I didn't see bad people. I saw traumatized people. And that shift in my thinking, I believe, is a shift we can all make, because once we realize the adversity that they experienced, horrible, horrible stories, from being kept in a cage to being beaten every day, to being molested every day, to being thrown against the walls. And the thing is, we expect people who've had these issues to perform normally in society. They have no tools, they have nothing, they have no reference point. And so you see somebody being bullied, that's a wake-up call. That's a cry for help. Someone who's bullying is being bullied at home. And I say no shame to the people that are doing this, because they don't know better either. But the awareness about child abuse is so important. Did you know that there are 19 states in the United States that still allow corporal punishment in their schools? And so this is ingrained in our society that it's okay to hit a child. But once a child is hit, their life view changes, because the world is no longer safe. And we need to bring safety back into the schoolroom, back into the home, back into the prisons, and back into society.
Yeah, I think you're right. And actually, one of the reasons why I was so inspired to do this talk with you guys is because, well, we know collectively, if you're alive, you're going to experience suffering in your life. But let's not talk about our adult suffering, because I think more interesting to talk about our children's suffering and how we can help them. And Daryl Scott, who is the founder of Rachel's Challenge, was inspired by your own daughter who was murdered at Columbine, and you discovered that this is what I understand to be true, she had been a great source of support for many, many others. And in the spirit of Rachel, you created Rachel's Challenge. Can you share with us what you're doing in school that was inspired by what Rachel was doing in school for others?
I'll be glad to. Thank you for having me today. 21 years ago, my daughter was murdered. She was the first victim of mass school shootings that have taken place. And my son was in the library that day where most of the killing took place. and lost two of his close friends beside him. They were both shot and killed. He looked down the barrel of two guns aimed at him and knew that he was going to die. And a split second before they pulled the trigger, the alarm system went off and it distracted Eric and Dylan, the two killers. And they never came back to the table where Craig was at, or I would have lost two of my children that day. But Rachel left us with 6 diaries. She was inspired by Anne Frank. And my wife and I became close friends with Meep Geese, the lady who hid Anne Frank in the attic. And Meep died a few years ago, but we got to spend time with her. And Rachel was influenced by a number of people. One was a World War I veteran who was a mentor in my life by the name of Norman Grubb. Norman was a best-selling author in the 1940s and 50s. And he taught us a lesson I never forgot. He said, Daryl, if you will learn to be a see-througher and not a look-at-er, life will have purpose and meaning. Don't look at people. Don't look at your circumstances, but learn to see through. Develop a single eye of faith that sees through instead of looks at, and your whole life will change. And I remember those words after Rachel was murdered, and we began to read her diaries, and we were astounded at the wisdom from a 17-year-old that has now reached 30 million students worldwide in the last 21 years. And her story has won 3 television Emmy Awards, been made into a major motion picture. It's been in many books. And we also do prison work. And I want to just mention that one of the most notorious serial killers in America's history, David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, is someone that I visit in prison quite often when I'm speaking in New York. David's life was radically changed 15 years ago. He had a spiritual experience that woke him up, and he began to move completely out of the realm of violence into the realm of acceptance and love of other people. Today, he reads to those who can't read in prison, writes letters for those who can't write, and does amazing things. And I consider David a friend, even though I know the horrible things he did when he was in his early 20s. Our reform systems are supposed to reform, and we're shocked sometimes when people do reform. But what we've done over the last 21 years is we do assemblies, we do trainings, we create clubs in schools. We have over 10,000 clubs that are active around the United States and in several other countries, and they perform acts of kindness. And we basically teach young people from a metaphorical place. If you look at an Emmy Award, there's one right behind me up here. There's 3 different parts to that Emmy. There's the earth on which the angel is tiptoeing, and she's reaching for an atom. And those 3 things represent what Joseph Campbell called the 3 languages. There's the methodical language, which most teachers use in schools. There's the metaphorical language represented by the angel. And then there is the mystical, unspoken language represented by the atom. And it's the second 2 languages that change people, not the first language. The methodical doesn't do any good. You can pour all the knowledge you want into their heads, it won't change them. But if you can reach the heart of a child through metaphorical stories and through a mystical realm of love, everything changes. So that's what we do.
I have a question for you, Daryl, because I felt this to be true from things Scarlett shared, and I know this to be true through my own loss of my mom dying very young. And I think it's true for you too, Ryan. Through those deaths, we were sort of reborn in a sense. I think that my own spiritual growth really came through that loss. I don't know who you were before you lost your daughter. I know who you are now, hearing more and more about Rachel's challenge and now wanting to help you with that work because it's so beautiful what you've done. But Rachel was that she pierced through, and you walked through that opening in a sense that her loss of life created. And I think that can be true. Again, one of the reasons I wanted to have this particular talk was I want to invite everybody who ever hears it or is here with us today to know that your pain is your opportunity for growth. It is okay to step through that pain. And like you said, the only way out is through. And it's through our pain that we can give others compassion and empathy. Why go through pain at all if you can't give it away as knowledge or healing to others?
There are places in the heart that can only be reached through sorrow and pain. and we either become bitter or better. And if we allow ourselves, we then become Yodas to other people, teachers to others who go through the same things. And so there is purpose and meaning in the worst things that occur to us.
Yes. It's interesting to me, we're talking about life and death, so I want to pivot over to Diane Gray for a second, who, as I expressed, she's a grief and end of life care expert, but also works with Elisabeth Kubler-Ross Foundation. And that's the right way to say it, right?
It is.
Okay, thank you. But I'm curious, how when someone is passing, if they have not been able to reach that level of compassion or love, and how they can manage their grief or their regret at the end of their life. What we're trying to talk about is how could you do it now? But I'm sure you've faced those moments with people who are passing away.
Yeah, I have. First of all, thanks for having me here. And I'm just honored to be a part of this conversation. It's really fascinating to me. I've read each of your stories, over the years, and what you're doing. It's really profound how each of you has turned, and many of your listeners too, have turned their deepest sorrow and pain toward profound healing and then grace. And that grace is not used in the religious sense. And I want to be clear about that. Grace means to what you were saying, each of you, about how we are souls with bodies. We're not bodies with souls. We are souls first. And so through grace, Scarlett and I have spoken many, many times about the fact that Adam Lanza, when he was a tiny infant, did not come, was not born to create devastation and horror and tragedy and killing and murder. He wasn't. A series of events occurred over time. Well, for many people, they don't face the reality that there is a ticking clock or that death is a part of life until they're right there. Well, what do you mean? Like, whether the diagnosis is when someone is 45 or 14 or 85, whatever that age is, it comes as a big shock. And this is where it's hard for many people to take their hands off the steering wheel and release control and surrender to grace. Okay. But what that looks like in terms of grace looks like, I also exude grace toward myself. I exude grace toward you, which is a little easier for a lot of people. But the most difficult stories that I hear when someone is, getting ready to die, maybe not imminently, but within 3 to 6 to 12 months, or they've been given a difficult diagnosis, is exuding grace towards themselves. And there's a difference between ego controlling, well, I'm just who I was and that's how it was, or grace towards oneself. As Buddha says, the circle of compassion is not complete unless it includes ourselves. Mm-hmm. And compassion for oneself is also, I didn't do so well. I tried to use control, power, and ego to manipulate. And now that I'm in this part of my life, where can I let go of control, power, and ego to create a sense of peace, not just for myself, but for those around me? It's really powerful. And so that's where love includes oneself as well as those around. And I've seen over and over where one can come to peace within oneself, and then that peace, it's energetic, really. It comes right out, and there's a peace within everyone else in their arena, everyone else in the family, everyone else as caregivers. It's really, really powerful. And so that peace and that grace and that surrender, to your point, also looks like unconditional love, which is what Elisabeth Kubler-Ross has done profound work on, what is unconditional love, right? And I think that's kind of what you're saying today, saying, how can I recognize within myself and within those around me that did I do the best I could at that time with the information that I had? Whether it's a Scarlett Lewis, who was a mom whose child died in the moment of shooting. There's a lot of sometimes guilt when we lose our child in an incident. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say I love you. I didn't say this. So grace means that we're going to reflect and shine light on those outside, but also ourselves. You know, and for those of you that don't know my story, I had a son who was diagnosed with a rare neurodegenerative disease when he was 4, turning 5. And they said, oh, he'll be dead by the time you get home from this doctor visit, and for sure within 10 years, 2 years, and he lived for 10 years. And we ended up having to make some really tough decisions in the medical ethical decision-making realm, which looks like palliative sedation and the removal of nutrition and hydration through hospice's help and care. And so Austin died at 14 years old, the decision that no mother wants to make. And so for 2 years afterward, I, even as a keynote speaker and a researcher on end-of-life care at that point, and it was amazing and doing end-of-life work, and I appreciated it. But even I went into a situation where I was giving a talk with a co-author from Northwestern University and Harvard. And I said, I'll go and sit down on this, in this guy's talk. And as I sat down, I said, I wonder what he's talking about today, because he was my co-author, right? And it was on the removal of nutrition and hydration. Like, and so what happened was, the shortest version is that he had a panel conversation, and I couldn't believe that my own shame and my own guilt and my own grief was just like a tidal wave. I sat in the last row, in the last seat, in the furthest place in the back of the room, because I felt so much shame that maybe I didn't trust God, or that I didn't do the right thing. And this is 2 years after my son's death. But to open myself up was to say, I'm not in control. My ego is not in charge. I have to exude grace and unconditional love towards myself. And this, his name is Dr. David Steinhorn. He sat me down at dinner that night and he said, I want you to say this. And he was kind of cheeky about it, you know, Guera, you know, Blondie, Guera, pay attention. I said, okay, yes, yes, yes. Newly grieved, so green. And he said, I want you to repeat after me. And I said, okay, and I'm waiting, right? And he says, no, say it. I said, okay. I did the best I could at that time with the information that I had.
I love that. You know, I think so much about 2 quotes. One is just do the next right thing. Sometimes I get lost inside myself and I need to simplify things. Just do the next right thing. And the other one is by Maya Angelou. It says something to the effect of, you know, you did the best you could. And when you learn to do better, you did better. And again, you know, that's why I think the sort of thought forums of what you all have collectively been through emotionally in your lives, spiritually as people, but you've put your knowledge into movements, into organizations, into sort of brick and mortar context, you know, for others to be able to tap into, because it wasn't there for you, or it wasn't there for your kid, or it wasn't there for the shooter of your child, or, you know. And so what you've done is you've answered the need through the whole of, you know, the sort of opening of your own pain, and your grace is that you created something in hopes that other people won't suffer as you and your loved ones have. And so, like you said, Diane, you know, we do the best we can, and when we know how to do better, we do better. And hopefully we don't go through these things for, you know, we go through these things on behalf of each other. I think that should be our offering to each other. We go through, you've been that way for me, Diane. We've talked privately, and I've gotten so much from you, from your life experiences, that has strengthened me as a person. Ryan, I wanted to get into some of, you know, the things that you're such a bright light in everything you do, and as a public figure, and, you know, so humble, and you've been through a lot of loss in your life. And again, this isn't a conversation about grief or loss, but it is about, you know, how can we choose love on behalf of each other, and use our pain as an opening to help each other.
Yeah. Well, and this is something too, Liz, and you know my story. And for those that don't, two major things. One, my brother committed suicide when he was 20 years old. This was about 11 years ago. Also lost my brother-in-law in the Las Vegas shooting. So for those of you who have been affected by the mass shootings, I've been at a country concert the last 4 nights, and I am a musician, so I've been performing. My voice is gone, but just being at that concert, it just flashes back to what they must have experienced, and all that pain. And it's almost like it's scary just to even be in that situation, which I hate, and I wish our country would do something about that and about all of these mass shootings. But to touch on doing the best that you can with the knowledge that you have, because that kind of spoke to me, that. And Daryl, what you said, either it makes you bitter or better. When I lost my brother, I left work for about a month, and I was not on TV at all. I needed to take, leave. I was with my mom. And when I got back, I didn't speak about it. I didn't talk about it. I didn't share my story. I was not educated on suicide because we don't do a real good job educating our youth. We're just now sort of getting to that place in our society. But, as we know, we all grew up, they didn't talk about suicide. People called it, cowardly. It is so much, misinformation. Just people don't understand it because we don't educate about it. So I just started reading and trying to learn about it and trying to, comprehend what happened and why he would do that. And I was very, very close to my brother. So it took me 5 years before I would speak about it publicly and shared my story on TV, which was very, very, still the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the best thing I've ever done because a lot of people could relate. I think that it helped others. And what helped me was Tony Dungy's book, the Hall of Fame coach for the Colts. He wrote a book about his son committing suicide. And I was thinking, wow, his dad's a Hall of Fame coach. He had this great life, because there was so much guilt for me with my brother that we didn't have enough. We didn't give him enough. We didn't help him enough financially. And then I was thinking about his story. And then Robin Williams happened. And then we started understanding as a society, wow, it's not about, just socioeconomic status. It's not about finances, so much more than that. So for me, I really tried to educate myself on it. And then I tried to help others. It was cathartic for me, but it was also because when I looked at Tony Dungy and thought, oh, he had this great life, he also lost his son. Now, if I could be brave enough to share my story, when people see my show, they go, oh, wow, he looks like he has this perfect life, but he's also been through some stuff too. And I think that's what it's all about. It's all about trying to help the next person. And now my heart breaks when I just had a friend and her little brother took his life. And I know she's just now starting this journey that we've all been through of pain and grief. And is it going to make us bitter, or is it going to make us better to try to help others,
Yeah, that's so much why I was inspired to call each of you together to have this conversation. I was saying, it's a beautiful summer day, and here we are getting into some pretty heavy stuff. But I don't think this is a heavy conversation. I think this is an opportunity. And I think what Daryl said about each of you and people who have experienced things like you have and turned it into the light in the world that each of you has, this is a really inspiring conversation because, like you said, I don't want to be bitter through the things that have hurt me. I want to help others through, I want to help others because of the things that have hurt me, because of the things I've been through. I want to offer that away. And I think you're right. Also being an actor and so on, you are very good at putting out a certain image of how you should be perceived or how one would perceive you instead of just telling the truth. And when we created the Respect Project, whenever I invite somebody into a conversation, I say, come and tell the truth on behalf of other people. Because like you said, suffering in silence, well, so many people are suffering in silence. And so many people don't have the emotional skills or tools, or as Fritzy said, families that give you that origin story where you know how to deal with your pain. And we're so many of us so isolated, especially during COVID, and especially the kids during COVID, and they're not doing well. And my child, for one, really did not do well during COVID. It's a very depressing time to be so isolated from other kids, and then the internet and the cyber bullying and all of this, the inundation of of social media on them, and the social awkwardness, because we're all of a different generation where we know how to communicate and hold deep conversation. They don't have that same skill because they're so often doing this.
Right.
you know. And so, Arthur, you haven't really talked about character.org, but we were talking about how can we help our children, you know, because although we're works in progress, and you know, and we have many years ahead of all of us, but they have a whole lifetime ahead of them. And so
Yeah.
how can we teach them with movements like Choose Love and Rachel's Challenge and character.org and, you know, America's Mighty Warriors and the Compassion Prison Project and the work you do, Diane and Ryan? How can we help give them the resources they need so they're not suffering in silence?
Well, thank you, Liz, for the opportunity to be here and to listen to everyone. I have not had the tragedy. I have not gone through the loss that so many of people here tonight have gone through. And it just, I'm grateful for that. But I have been part of character.org since 1993. And if you want to know what character.org is, you can just look at Scarlett's background right there. Can we imagine a future without courage, without gratitude, without forgiveness, without compassion, without respect? I can't. Character.org can't. So we know that character is the choices we make. It's owning up to our mistakes. It's the resolve to do the right thing. And character is also elevating others. That's what you're doing right now, Liz. You could be spending this moment somewhere else, but you are elevating not just us, but all of us. That's your character. And so we at character.org work mostly with schools. We have a National Schools of Character program, but we also work with parents and after school programs and sports. I got involved because when I was at the Air Force Academy as a senior scholar there, and I was researching courage right there on Scarlett's, backdrop there. And I was looking first at physical courage, that every person, and again, Debbie, you know about this, that every military person has to, at some point, show that courage. And then they asked me to look at moral courage, the courage to stand up, the courage to speak out when others are silent or afraid to stand up. And then I got into the research of what I call personal courage, the courage to be who we are. Just thinking about, Daryl, your daughter's when she was looking at, the diaries, that was her way of expressing who she is and who she wants to be and her meaning and her purpose. Or the courage, and I think this is one of the most difficult types of courage, the courage to change. And, in the military, we call it before the storm, in the storm, and after the storm. And at character.org, we really focus on before the storm. And Debbie, you were talking about this, the practices, the way that we can create habits of mind, habits of heart, habits of hands, behaviors, actions that get us ready for the storm. And that one practice that keeps coming back to me is self-talk, positive self-talk. Because I know so many teens, and that's who I mostly work with and study and research, who are just filled with negative self-talk. And how can we refute that negative self-talk with positive self-talk, expressions, affirmations? In the military, we call them battle cries, ways of us saying, it's coming back to like the great movie, The Help, right? And the Octavia Spencer's character, when she said, you is kind, and you is smart, and you is important, and how that we kept repeating. We need more positive self-talk. So you can go into any school and say, so what's your word? What's your affirmation? And it doesn't have to be a word or an affirmation. It could be a picture. It could be a piece of music. But it needs to be something that you repeat to yourself all the time. For me, it's gratitude. I say to myself every day, an attitude of gratitude creates blessings. And let me just say one last thing. There's research by Ethan Cross at the University of Michigan that I've started to use the last 4 or 5 years. I don't say just that expression. I say Arthur. I use my name, Arthur. An attitude of gratitude creates blessings. And we know from the research that if you say your name, you're going to live into that behavior, live into that goodness.
Love that.
Love
I mean,
that. I'm writing this down in my notes right now. I love that. All of you have said something profound that I'm putting in my notes because it's good. This is what it's about. It's about us helping each other, right? And just humanity. It's about us helping one another. I'm learning so much just from hearing all of you, and you're so enlightening. So thank you.
And that really is why, there are many topics that we do at the Respect Project there's a myriad of topics. We could get into anything. We're here to support your nonprofits so that we can help you express your mission and get the message out there. But we're also here as a community to talk, like you said, respectfully, not only to each other, and we have lots of differences and we don't agree, and we come from different backgrounds, different races, religions, and all of that, but also to learn how to communicate respectfully to ourselves. And I think the Respect Project in general, we tend to walk away from it not only having more respect for each other, but also mutual respect. And that includes self-respect, how we conduct ourselves, how we move through the world. It only takes a little bit to tell the truth fast. And like you said, offering yourself compassion and healing. And that's the ultimate kindness. But if it wasn't shown to us in our childhood, and that's what I'm fascinated by with each of you, did you learn it in your childhoods? Where did you get this wisdom? Or, was it the dark night of the souls that you had to go through to hit rock bottom and finally learn how to give yourself that forgiveness, that kindness? I like this thought, which is kindness is choosing love over hate, light over darkness, compassion over judgment. How did you get to a place where you didn't judge yourself? You could forgive yourself. You held yourself accountable, but you picked yourself back up and you wiped off the dirt and you said, you know what? Tomorrow is another day and I'm going to engage. I'm going to lean in. And I think you said, Daryl, and this is my version of it, to not be a renter, to buy into this life, to make a commitment to this existence and, make a difference in people's lives, because we're not just sort of skimming this life experience, we're digging into it, into the DNA and the fabric of it.
I think that's
Go ahead, Scarlett.
That's a great point, Liz, that we have to take responsibility for the world that we live in. And after Sandy Hook, I didn't have these skills and tools. I was 44 years old, but what I did have was a practice of being present in the moment. I live that way with my boys. And by the way, that's the way to live your life with the fewest regrets, is being present with the ones that you love. And so I was present even after the loss of my son, and I watched what was going on after Sandy Hook. And, it was blame, finger pointing. And of course, all the blame went to Adam Lanza and his mother, who gave him the guns. And then Adam Lanza was the former student. But I thought, wow, that's just way too easy. Because if it really was all his fault, then it would never, and his mother's, it would never have happened before. And Daryl, and it would never have happened again. But wait a minute, it's kind of become our new norm. And so whose fault is that? And I really had to think about that. And I realized I have to take my part of the responsibility. I was one of those people before that looked at things going on in the world and thought, ugh, gosh, that's terrible. But that happens to the people on the cover of People. That doesn't happen to people like me. That's never going to happen to me. And all I need to do is just, be responsible for my two boys and raise them as best I can. And that's the extent of what I need to do. And what I realized after that is that's actually not the case. We all have to take responsibility. We are all responsible, and blaming is not a way to do that. It's literally doing something about it. And I started researching, and I found out about character and about social and emotional learning. And I realized that if Adam Lanza had the ability to cope with all of the horrific things that happened to him in his life, including bullying and isolation, most likely sexual abuse, being denied essential services that he needed throughout his life. if he had been given some skills and tools, then it wasn't his goal to be as destructive as possible. Maybe it came to that. But certainly, as you said, Elisabeth, he was born a perfect child of God, and he was cultivated into what he became by his environment. And who is his environment? I lived in the community. So I had to take responsibility. And in taking responsibility, I could be part of the solution. I found these essential life skills. I learned them as an adult. And my life is exponentially better. And everyone can, but I think a lot of people they lack courage. They lack courage to think, wow, what could I become? What could I do? What changes could I make? Not only within myself, but in my environment, in my community. Instead, we just remain in our own lives, and we can do so much more.
But it's interesting what you're saying, to sort of get into and thank you for that, Scarlett. For those of you that are with us, we're making Scarlett's book and journey into a movie, and we're developing that right now with Lifetime. And I just really appreciate you being honest and always telling everything from that place of wanting to grow and wanting others to grow. And your life is your offering, and I really want to just recognize that. So thank you.
Thank you.
That said, I'm interested, why is it some people see their pain as, they have so much self-pity and it's, oh, for me, as opposed to some people who, they recognize that their scars are their strength, that their suffering is their, it turns into their courage. I mean, Debbie, I know you have a lot to say on that topic, Fritzi as well. And Diane also, just talking about grief, how do you get to a place where you identify your grief as not something to get lost in, but something that becomes a springboard into growth and opportunity, and like we're all saying here, into living a more courageous life?
Well, I think to Scarlett's point, right? She was, and yours as well. We were talking about birth. There are two commonalities: birth and death. That's it. That's the big aha. It's not hard. And when we look around, and I'll tell you exactly what happened to me. My son was dying, clinically dying, and I got a phone call from another mom who had just lost 2 daughters to the same disease. And then 2 days later, I got a phone call from a dad. He was an Amish farmer who had 3 daughters with the disease, and his son, who was 9, came and sat down on the porch and said he was tired from working the farm. And the dad had just gotten out of the hospital with the 3 girls. And the son rolled over at 9 years old and died of a heart attack. And to me, that was the big, like, oh my gosh, this is not about me. This is not this. Even in my home, whatever was going on was not about me. The pain was not all about me. But here's the big, like, wah, is neither was the love. All of the love that my son had to give, all of the love that the prisoners that you work with, Fritzi, that all of the children, Scarlett, that you work with, all of the people, Ryan, that you work with and talk to, and everybody else on this call, all of that love is all about everybody else too. So it's not just the pain, it's also the love. And so you asked me a question earlier about, what can people do, is to remember that while you are breathing, you are still alive, and it is never too late. It's never too late. You can slide into home base, whatever home looks like to you, and you can say, as long as I'm breathing, I have that chance to flip the switch and learn something new and turn my life over as a testimony to love.
Without
really, love in the big sense.
Without a doubt. And I tell you, watching the compassion circle, watching Fritzi in that environment, you see that every day is an opportunity, and to grow, to heal, to get back to love. Dostoevsky said, "What is hell? I maintain that it is the suffering of being unable to love." because in spite of what we go through, we are here, and we are here to live out loud. We are here to be heard, and we are here to love each other and to create community. And so again, I just think you're right, that we have that opportunity every morning to sort of start again and just do the next right thing.
Well, and it's exponential. That's the sort of I'm a science nerd, right? And a researcher. The whole thing about that is it's exponential. It's just not give one, well, maybe get one. It's give one and you end up giving like hundreds and that, I mean, just goes and goes. And I think that for the person who is a little maybe all about me-ish, that's a pretty good return on investment. Like if I give a little, I feel this much better. I don't know. I think it's pretty amazing how love works, and it's a choice, Scarlett, to your point, and to yours, Liz, that it's about choosing love, and everybody else here, it's a choice. It's not always easy.
Elizabeth, if I could jump in real quick here. For those of you on the call that don't know me, my son, Mark Lee, was the first Navy SEAL that was killed in Iraq, August 2nd, 2006. And if you saw the movie American Sniper, he's one of the main characters that's portrayed in that movie. But as for you other parents who lost a child, we know the toughest loss that you could walk through is the loss of a child. I've also been a widow for 27 years. My husband committed suicide. And so I think your question, Elizabeth, to how did we get that strength? For me, I look back through all those tragedies, and there's many more than that developed the perseverance and the character with each one that I would go through, that I was determined I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to give up. I was going to continue to push forward. You have to process through the grief. You can't ignore it. You can't go around it. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. You've got to go right through it. So doing those things to serve other people makes such a big difference to help. And I think there's a fine line between people that go through grief and they get themselves locked into doing something to avoid the grief. Mm-hmm. That's not healthy to do that. But so many of you on the call have expressed that the tragedies you went through, then you found new purpose and you found a new mission to continue forward in spite of the loss. And I tell people all the time, I had no choice, the news that was given to me on August 2nd, 2006. When we were notified that Mark had been killed. But I did have a choice how I responded to that. Mm-hmm. And I tell people my choice was to put on Mark's boots and pick up his weapon and stay in the fight for every other man and woman who's served and sacrificed. Stay in the fight for every other Gold Star family member who's lost a loved one. And it was God who gave me the strength every day to do that. And I wake up, someone on the call mentioned earlier, gratitude. I wake up every morning and I find one thing to be grateful for. And you guys know in the beginning stages of grief, that's hard to do. You're just so consumed by the loss and the depth of the pain. I remember times my heart was not just emotionally broken, my heart actually physically hurt. But I still would wake up and say, did I have hot water in my shower this morning? Thank you, God, for the hot water. And then I tell people, go out and do something physical. Even if it's just run up and down your stairs once, if that's all you can handle, start there. And then, the next week, make 2 flights of stairs. And pretty soon, those feel-good endorphins are being released that help you do that. And then to serve others, whether it's walking your neighbor's dog or going to a preschool and reading books to a kid, not everybody's called to start a foundation. But right. We all should have that attitude of serving others. And when you're serving others, you're not focused inward on your pain. And it's such rewarding to do that. I would encourage all of you to go to our website at americasmightywarriors.org and read Mark's amazing last letter home.
Oh my God, that letter, Debbie, is it's just the most beautiful.
Yeah, it's so powerful. And he talks about, Daryl, you talked about the random acts of kindness. He says, when's the last time you paid for a stranger's cup of coffee or meal or tank of gas? And that was the first program we started, was our random acts of kindness, to do that. And something so simple can totally change someone's day. If you're going through the drive-through to get your coffee in the morning, you pay for the coffee behind you, who knows? They may have just got bad news. They may have just been notified they lost a loved one. They may have just gotten in a fight with their spouse. And you do that and they're like, it's a refocus for them to go, oh my goodness. And Mark ends that letter with, to my family and friends, do me a favor, pass on the kindness, the love, the precious gift of human life. And I think that's what this is all about today. We do have that choice how we respond. We didn't have a choice, the timing or the tragedies that happen, but we do have a choice how we respond. And if we respond in love, we can change our world.
It really does come down to that, Debbie. It's love or fear. I think that, Marianne Williamson said those are our two buckets. And that is why I wanted to have this talk, is to just encourage everybody to continue to choose love, because life can feel very scary. And like you said, just creating those daily ways of being grateful and offering kindness, those begin to become our tunnels, towards our own healing. Nancy, who's here with us, asked, is there anything in particular any of you did daily or regularly to help ground you in your darkest moments? And you can jump in. But if there's anything that, began to become something that you did to help you go towards what you're saying, Debbie, making those simple acts of kindness your North Star.
Yeah, and for me, it was having a daily quiet time. I would be in the Word every single day, and that was my true north.
And for me, it was practicing this formula that we teach in the Choose Love movement, literally taking a courage breath, taking a moment to get into the present moment so that I could thoughtfully respond to what was happening rather than react. And so that was courage. And then gratitude was big for me as well. We have so many thoughts, the majority of which are negative and repetitive. We can only focus on one thought at a time. So I use gratitude to shift my lens when it goes to those dark places. You can always think of something to be grateful for. And then forgiveness for myself, for maybe falling short or things that I didn't do, couldn't do, didn't know to do. And then forgiveness for others. Forgiveness was a huge part of my healing. I forgave the shooter, and everybody was so shocked at that, except that I did that so that I could take my personal power back. I was not going to be another victim of the shooter. And the only way to do that was through forgiveness. We too often think it's a gift we give somebody who doesn't deserve it, somebody who's hurt us, that doesn't care, doesn't know. But really, it's the gift that we give ourselves. And then we've been talking about compassion, and that is having the courage to step outside of your own pain, to use that. We've also talked about how we use what we learn through our pain and we translate it into service to others. Of course, that takes courage, but science, and this is all science today. We're talking about love, but there are decades of research behind the benefits for those that choose that and choose to do it. When we do for others, we're actually helping heal ourselves. And that is the beautiful thing. And honestly, I think that's the key to life, learning that we are here. We're going to go through difficulty, but Elisabeth, that's, as you said, that's how we learn and grow. That's how we're shaped and molded. And then really our responsibility, our job, what we need to learn to do is take what we learn from going through that difficulty and use it to help others. And when we've done that, we've found the key to life.
Absolutely.
I would love to have you and some of the other guests come on my show called Trauma Talks, which we're bringing to prisons, and have the men hear this, men and women hear this, because you're a victim of a horrible crime. And for them to hear that would really be an alchemy moment for them.
My favorite talks are with prisoners, and they're just people that are in pain, and I've learned so much from them. They never knew that there was a choice. All they ever knew was anger, hatred, and revenge. And the fact that there is a choice to choose love is mind-blowing to them. And so I would love to. I'd be honored to.
Awesome. Thank you. I also wanted to say one thing. One of the things I talk to the guys and women about, instead of doing microaggressions, do micro compassions.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you know, just a little nice thing goes, it's a random act of kindness in a sense, but you know, when you have that impulse to be cruel or snarky, shift that around and be kind and compassionate.
And I would say for myself, empathy. Look at your own soul as a roadmap for what you can offer to others. Give to others what you need. And the Respect Project was something that I needed. I needed people to communicate honestly on behalf of each other, to do it quickly, to do it in a huge, big way, to tell the truth, because I do feel one of the great diseases of humanity is that we suffer in silence. And though there are some themes like suicide and grief that tend to circle back in the Respect Project, it's because I do believe that people are suffering. But what I hope people can get out of this talk is that our suffering is something we need to burn through, and through that surviving we find our, you know, our search for meaning in life. And so to not be afraid of it or reject it or buck at it, but to embrace it as fact and then use it as a way to help others, really. Because one thing we know for sure is we will experience suffering. So it's how, like Debbie said, or Arthur said, or all of you said, it's how we react to it. It's how Diane, you said, how do we react to this? Ryan, for years not wanting to talk about it. Now you're telling people your story, and telling our stories is one of the oldest ways that we heal each other.
Right. And I felt for me, I was doing a disservice to so many people and families by having a platform and not using it. And I remember the day before I was going to share my story on the show, we did a whole hour on mental health. And I wanted to back out. And I was so nervous. I was like, I don't want to talk about this. I do not want, you know, there was a lot of shame and, you know, guilt and all of that. I didn't want to be known now as that person that, you know, had his brother took his own life. I mean, now when you Google my name, it's on there, you know, and it was like, I didn't want that platform. And I remember thinking about Magic Johnson. 1991, I was in high school when Magic Johnson shared that he had HIV. And I was thinking, that's the most courageous thing that anybody has done publicly, especially at that time when HIV was a death sentence. I was like, how did he do that? I remember thinking about that before my show. I was like, how courageous was that? And how much work he's done since, you know, speaking out. And I thought, if he could do that, I can do this. You know, and I think that we all learn from other people, right? So now I'm hoping to be an example to the next person, as all of you are. It's all about passing the torch and helping somebody else. Otherwise, we are all doing a disservice to others.
It's so good. So often.
Yeah, sorry, Debbie, go.
I was going to say, so often in our tragedies, we feel like we're the only one. No one else could possibly understand what we're going through.
Right.
And so we tend to then stay inward. And like you said, you didn't want to share, you didn't want to tell anything to people. And one of the things that we do at our foundation through our Helping Heroes Heal program is we help our veterans who have traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress and are suicidal. And it is so crazy. They will be pouring their heart out to me. And then when I get to the point where I ask if they're suicidal, then they just kind of clam up. And, you know, I've had them tell me before, you have no idea what I'm going through. And then I'll say, well, actually, my husband committed suicide 27 years ago. And the walls just come tumbling down, and they just open up their heart and they pour it out because they now know someone else does understand.
Right.
But we need to use our suffering, our tragedies, and our trials to give other people hope and to encourage them.
Yep.
And I think by doing that, it reduces shame.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that we see in all of these situations are shame, blame, and guilt. I coulda, shoulda, woulda. And the shame that comes from knowing someone, well, I could have, whatever. But I think we need to also realize that each soul has its own trajectory that has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with us. I know people who have gone through years and years of working with people who have contemplated suicide and not completed it, only to have it happen. And from that, we can also look at shame, blame, and guilt, and as survivors, and say, okay, wait a minute. This person had their own soul trajectory that had nothing to do with me. I mean, in Scarlett's case, you know, should I have sent my child school that day is a question that many parents have. Well, of course. Well, yeah, but of course. Prisoners, the same. Every instance has an element of shame, blame, and guilt to it. And I think when we can start talking about these issues in open forums, or even in a quiet moment of someone's home over coffee, and just say, this is what's going on in my life, and really talk about it, it takes shame and it pushes it to the side. It takes guilt and it pushes it to the side. And then mental health elevates. That's science. Right? It helps to reduce, and then we can bring in the other elements of gratitude, unconditional love, and all of the other things we're talking about. But it's the talking. You know, there was a great film years ago by a friend of mine, Jennifer Steinman. It's called Motherland. And it was really fascinating. And the short version is that there were 6 American mothers. She took them to Africa. And the concept was that the American mothers were going to go to Africa. And of course, we Americans were going to teach the Africans how to do guilt and do grief. And it actually was the other way around, because these beautiful African mothers said, keep talking, keep crying, keep singing, keep dancing, keep talking. And it was through that they got rid of their grief. And the Americans were taken aback by it. We as a country are very closed when it comes to elements of suicide, murder, prison, grief. It just goes over here. So I don't know. I just think that you guys are doing extraordinary work, and whoever's listening, please don't stuff it down. It creates anger and thoughts of suicide, and mental health gets compressed. It's really, it's heartbreaking. So thanks.
Well, with that, I think we'll close. It's been an hour, and I appreciate each of you. Some of you are on the East Coast. It's late there, but I just want to say thank you, Diane. I think you really tied it up beautifully. And there are places for you if you are in a darker time right now, if you're suffering. Check out these organizations. If your children are going through a lot, check out these organizations. And like you said, Diane, I find when we say things out loud, those secrets that we hold in our heart lose power. And so if you are suffering in silence, if you have secrets that are too hard to bear, there is community. I hope the Respect Project is a community for you guys. And thank you for coming and sharing your personal stories on behalf of each other. And I just have nothing but respect for you. So thank you for your time today.
Likewise, Liz. Thank you for putting this together.
Thank you, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we'll be having another Respect Project talk August 8th on inspiration and the curious mind. And so we will see you then, and send you so much love and much respect. Until next time.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, you
Bye.
guys.
Thank you.
You're all phenomenal. What a gift.